Hi, BookTube. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. It's time for an update. So I want to update you guys because, I will be going to visit my sister soon, and I'm kind of trying to pick what books to bring with me. The problem is, I know that I will probably not get as much reading time as I do when I go visit my grandma, because there's a lot more distractions at my sister's. Like, she has 3 precious little children, and then one of them, his birthday, he's having a Harry Potter birthday, which is, I know a lot of people don't like to talk about Harry Potter, or at least they don't like to talk about the author of Harry Potter series. But I still love Harry Potter. For me personally, I do separate the two of them, because yes, she created it, but I grew up with Harry Potter, and I have a hard time of not wanting to. And it has been part of my life for a long time, and it was kind of the first big fantasy book series that I got into, so it's hard for me to, so I would, and I want my nephews to get into it. Yes, there are things about J.K. Rowling that I don't like and don't agree with. Yes, I do not agree with her perspective on things, her opinions. But yeah, I think overall it's a fun story. It's a great story, and and I think we all should be able to react to it how we want. If we still love Harry Potter, then we should, So, yeah, so I'm just letting you guys know that that's why my nephew's wanting to have a Harry Potter themed party, and I respect other people's decisions to just not associate with Harry Potter anymore. I get that. But like I said, I still love it. And, but I do not support J.K. Rowling herself, and I don't even read her books beyond Harry Potter. I'm not interested in them, so anyway, I just wanted to give that 2 cents. I always feel like if I bring up Harry Potter, I have to mention something about, to assure people I don't support her at all. But anyway, so I was trying to decide what books to bring. So it's like, I don't want to bring too many books with me because, I want to at least get some books. The problem is if I bring too many, then I know I'm not going to get through all of them. But it's just very hard to decide which books to bring, which books I'm going to be in the mood for. And I did I wanted to make sure there were some books I got finished before we left, so I wouldn't have to worry about them and feel like, oh, I should bring those with me. Especially because I've been drawn to other books. So the first book I finished was The Weight of Ink. It was one of these things where I was reading 2 books, and I decided, I was gonna focus on one book in particular, but then I decided, I'm a lot closer to finishing this one than the other one, which, funny enough, I did finish the other one after I read this one. This is The Weight of Ink by Rachel Kadish. It is a historical fiction, which I did do a separate review because I absolutely love this. This is has 2 timelines. It is similar to The Historian, where you have, except for she's not a historian, she's a college professor, and has been led to this document that was scribed by this young woman in the 1600s, a Jewish scribe. So not only is it a woman who wrote it, but is a Jewish girl. And she's discussing some ideas that girls would not be expected to discuss. They expect them to get married and all that. And so it deals with a lot of what women struggle with back then and today. Because, of course, yes, it was a lot worse back then, but today we still experience sexism and men just assuming things about women and passing judgments on them and thinking, yes, biologically there are some things that we just can't physically do, but there are a lot of things we can do that men assume that we can't. And so we have the two important issues of the story is the issues that these 2 women, Helen Watt, the professor, and who is an elderly woman with Parkinson's disease. And then Esther Velasquez, who is the scribe from the 1600s, because we also get her story. So we deal with that, and Jewish history, what they had to deal, what they've dealt with, and like I know about, I'm familiar with the whole biblical, what happened when the Jews were slaves, the Egyptians, and all that, and then there's also the World War II storylines and stories and what happened to, in the Holocaust. But I like when, but it's kind of nice to read a different time period about in Jewish history, to talk about that, something different, and to learn about that, because those weren't the only times the Jews suffered and were punished for having different beliefs. But anyway, so, and this was also a book I got from when we went to North Carolina went to Chimney Rock back in October, and not in Asheville, but I cannot remember the other city we went to that we were suggested to go to. I still do not remember what it's called, but we, from the bookstore I went to there, which was a lot smaller of a bookstore. I actually kind of liked the Asheville one and wish I had had more time there. But unfortunately, my dad's idea of exploring, having fun, is not walking around a bookstore for hours. He wants to do other stuff, which, yeah, on the one hand, I get it, we're in this town. Of course, he wants to explore other parts, not just that one store. But I kind of felt a little bit of pressure in both situations to, but the other one was kind of small, so it was a limited selection. But I'm glad I was able to find this one, and I loved it. I'm glad I bought it, and I'm glad I read it. I loved it. Like I said, I have a separate review for this book if you guys are interested. So that was the first one I finished in July. I started in June. So the other one, I was surprised I was able to finish. Both these I was surprised I was able to. This one, the other one, technically I'm not finished, but it's basically 3 books in one big volume. And the first book is more of a novella. But this is for Jane Austen July, my reread of Mansfield Park. And I feel like people don't give this one enough credit. I rewatched Olive from Book Olive's video where she talked about this book, and and how people just kind of dismiss this book or just ignore it or say, oh, you can skip this one because of, like, the main character is not as dynamic as Lady Susan or Emma Woodhouse or, Lizzie Bennet or Marianne, not as dramatic and, as Marianne. She's one of her more quiet ones, more reserved heroines, and just a very passive character that gets often bullied and throughout the story. And this is also a more serious novel, and the love interest is kind of a disappointment. And it's very sanctimonious and very moralistic. So people have a lot of issues with this one, but I loved it, and I like its commentary on social mores and class, in the class system in England, and how strong and resilient Fanny Price is as a main character. I think there's a lot of things that people miss about Fanny. Like, she's not as passive as people think. She's not, like, witty and clever, and she's not sassy and, all that. She doesn't, like, stand up for herself, in a sense, but she is very strong-willed and doesn't let people push her around as much as people think she does. She sticks to her principles, and yes, she fears her uncle. But the fact that she doesn't bite back with her aunt Norris, first of all, shows that she's smart. She knows that if she fights back, she will, this is her, like, there won't be consequences. Like, they gave her shelter because her parents couldn't afford to raise her. Her mom married married poor, and she puts up with a lot. She is a Cinderella figure, but not in a negative way. Like, I think, you know, there was another video I saw where talking about Cinderella and why people need to, you know, consider how strong Cinderella really is. Like, she's not a fighter. She's not. Neither character are fighters. They don't say anything. They don't, but they are still strong in their own way. They put up with a lot of crap, and they still remain a good person, and they still remain kind to people and respectful to people. Because there are people that can become bitter and angry, and or, you know, I mean, she's still afraid, but she's also, despite her fear, still keeps going. And this has some really great antagonists. The Crawford siblings are just deliciously manipulative and not downright, not evil, but just manipulative and selfish, but in a really compelling way. They're both very complicated characters. They both have good parts. They have some good things in them, and they recognize that Fanny is a good person. Which I think is why Henry Crawford wants to conquer her, as I like to put it. But just, they are so much fun to read about, and as another reviewer pointed out, she might even potentially be friends with Lizzie Bennet, or I personally think more like a frenemy. Like, there might be mutual respect between them and admiration between the two of them, but not necessarily, I don't think she would necessarily approve of Mary Crawford's behaviors. And also just, it also looks at, like I said, the mores of society and the struggles of being a good person, but also, you know, getting caught up in society and everything. And, like, you know, it's just, I think this is just really good. I think people need to give this another shot, before they completely dismiss it. But anyway, so this was a reread. I'm glad I reread it because I enjoyed it again. And if you watched my, and I am also currently reading Mysteries of Udolpho, which that's going to come with me, definitely. I think it's somewhere around here. Yeah, I see it. This is the next book I decided to read for Jane Austen July, because Anne Radcliffe is a contemporary of Jane Austen. In Northanger Abbey, they talk about this book. They're reading this book. And also in Becoming Jane, which, yeah, it's not the most historically accurate movie, but in that movie she does meet Anne Radcliffe. Now, I don't know, like I said, it's not the most historically accurate story, so I don't know if that part actually happened, if she ever met Anne Radcliffe. But I know, but either way, they do talk about this book in Northanger Abbey. And maybe they put that in there for, like, a fantasy of Jane Austen's, that maybe she would have loved to meet Anne Radcliffe, and they just put it in there because, oh, yay, she could have, this is what would happen if she could have met Anne Radcliffe. But I don't know, I'm gonna have to look that one up. But either way, like I said, it is talked about Northanger Abbey, so, and I think she was publishing around the time that Jane was, or maybe before Jane published. So I'm reading this one. I'm going to bring this one because this is the longer one. Okay, and then the other book I was able to get done was the first book in the Huguenot Connection trilogy by Paul C.R. Monk. So this is the whole trilogy in this one big volume. And the first one is only 180 pages, so it is a novel. So I was able to get through that one surprisingly quickly. It only took me 2 or 3 days. This, like The Weight of Ink, deals with religion and religious persecution. So this is around right before when King Louis XIV was running France, and he decided he wanted to unify the country in one religion, and he is Catholic. So, and there is a huge Protestant population in France at the time, and I guess they called them Huguenots. And so he decides that the only solution with less bloodshed is to basically get rid of them all. Either force them to abjure, or just get rid of them, send them away, kick them out. And our main family, the Duplac family, Janine and Jacob with their, I think they have 4 children. They are our main characters, and they refuse to abjure and sign the paper. Even though Janine's sister, or sister's husband, Robert Garrison, does decide to sign the paper because he is afraid, and also he knows that it's the only way he can protect Janine and Jacob. Because at least if he's Catholic, he can take them in and shelter them. Unfortunately, it kind of backfires on him. And like, Jacob is forced into servitude and then eventually sold into slavery, sent to the Americas. And I say it like that because in Ever After, that's what they called it, the Americas. Which I'm wondering, I meant to look up the timeline of when Ever After was supposed to take place. I think it's the 14th. It's the 16th century, I think. So I have to look up that and see what time period that is. But anyway, so, and Janine is forced to go into hiding, but she has to leave her kids behind with her brother-in-law and sister. So far this is really good, very interesting. I'm always fascinated by stories about religious persecution and just seeing how horrible people can be just to force their religion on someone. Like, there is a lot of ugliness to religion, unfortunately. And every religion, I'm sure, has their people that are a little bit too zealous and forceful on their beliefs. And luckily in the United States, I think it's not as bad, or at least they can't get away with as much. But I do believe in other countries, it's still pretty bad how aggressive people are with their religion. And forcing people to convert to their religion. But this is just, this book made me so angry, but obviously not in a way that was a bad book, but in a way that just seeing what Jacob and Janine have to deal with, all because the king has decided, I want to, make people all Catholic, so I'm going to get rid of people that have a different belief system than me. And he tries to spin it as, I'm trying to unify the country. It's a good thing. And his soldiers who are trying to, put out his agenda are all like, why are you being so stupid? What's the big deal? Just sign the damn paper. And it's like, no, it is a big deal because they are sacrificing their whole belief system because your king has a completely different belief system. It's like, well, you have to believe what I believe. And it's like they describe it as their soul. They feel like it's like they're hurting their soul by sacrificing what they believe and changing their belief just by signing the stupid paper. And there's also their oldest daughter, who's a 13-year-old girl. She's a teenager. Like, she has that response of asking her aunt, well, why doesn't mom and dad just sign this paper? All my friends are doing it. What's the big deal? And on the one hand, I understand because she is a teenager. She doesn't understand. She can't comprehend what this means for her parents. And that she doesn't understand religion. And she wants to hang out with her friends. Like, at one point, it is offered for her to go see her, to be reunited with her mom. And she's like, but I want to stay with my friends. And on the one hand, I get it. She's a teenager. What can you expect? But on the other, I still want to smack her. She still pissed me off. But, like I said, I get that she can't understand, but on the other hand, she's like, you're such a brat. And you're gonna too late realize the consequences of your brattiness and be like, I want to stay with my friends, or what's the big deal? My friends are doing it. Like, I just want someone to say to her, oh, so if your friends would jump off a bridge, would you do that? Which I know that's a cliche. Every parent says that, but still. Anyway, this is really interesting. Like I said, the first one is the shortest. That's why I was able to finish it. But, but I can see the other two. At least the second one is pretty long. I don't know about the third one, but I'm guessing it's long. I mean, this is a chunker. This is all the first book. This right here. This is all the first book. So you can see it's really short. Like I said, it's only 180 pages. And that's The Merchant's Virtue. Book 2 is The Voyage of Malice. And last book is Land of Hope. And and also seeing what Jacob has to go through. He ends up having to protect this young girl who almost gets sexually assaulted by a sailor who's like, oh, she's pretty. I'm going to show her love and stuff. Which, it's funny because, just last night I was watching Cinema Therapy talking about the Cinderella movies, all the different Cinderella movies, and one of Cinema Therapy, one of them's a therapist. So that's the point of his videos. He's discussing and talking about the therapy of these movies and the characters, and he talks about Cinderella and the prince, how he's always an idiot and is like, I love you, you're so pretty. They kind of make fun of the Rodgers and Hammerstein's version with Brandy, and when they're the love duet, which is a beautiful song, by the way. And they're all and he's right before that, there's the whole little dialogue between the two of them where he's the prince is do you believe, when you see someone for the first time, you can know in an instant that she's the one? Is that possible? And the guys are the Cinema Therapy guys are no, it's not possible. And then right after, of course, Brandy says her line of, yes, it's very possible. Which, of course, it's a fairy tale, so it's supposed to be a little magical and whimsical and unrealistic, but still. So it's just funny because it made me think of this. There's the scene with the guy trying to attack the girl that Jacob is protecting, and he sees her and he's like, oh, you're so beautiful, and he wants to touch her and just all this inappropriate stuff. And he's like, I love her. I'm going to show her real love. It's no, you're not. You're just going to feed your ego and your man part. But yeah, there was definitely a lot of emotion reading that first book. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of emotion reading the rest of the trilogy. So I will start this again when I get back. But I figured because it looks like half the trilogy takes place at sea, because I feel like summertime is books that are, water-related, water books that take place on the ocean, or maybe at a beach or something, or even books about mermaids and fish and stuff. I think that's great summer reads. But anyway, so there's that. So that's where I'm at. I did start reading. Not only was I reading Mysteries of Udolpho, I picked that one. I did start this. The Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man with Dubliners by James Joyce. I have Ulysses, and I started Ulysses. But Ulysses is a bit long, and it's kind of confusing because he uses a lot of different writing styles in each section of the book. And it almost feels a little bit like stream of consciousness at times. And he also isn't one of those authors who does not believe in quotations, using quotations. And William Gaddis also is the same way. I'm reading his the Recognitions. If I can read that one, I'll be very proud of myself. If I can read that one along with Ulysses. But I figure, you know what? I'm gonna get this one, and this is one of the books I got from the roast office. I figured I'm gonna start this one. If I can read this one, then I can do Ulysses, because this one's not as long. And I actually had a copy of the Dubliners, but I ended up giving it away, donating it around the time when we were still living in Maryland. And because I didn't think at the time I would ever read it, but then, BookTube happened, and there's booktubers that have talked about James Joyce. Sometimes I gotta admit, I forget that there are people that won't necessarily know. I try not to be a snob about it. But then it was Terry was asking me, because I was showing her in this book that there's a page on here that I really appreciate the book had in here. This. I really appreciate the book had it. I took a picture of it, showed her and Larissa. I sent it to them. It was like, all books should have this, especially, you know, English, British books. And, and so she asked me what book it was. I told her, and she was like, oh, never heard of them. And, you know, I try not to, which, Derry, if you watch this video, maybe your sister's right. Maybe I'm a little bit of a snob. But I have to remind myself, you know, so I have to remind myself, it's like, okay, not everyone's gonna hear of James Joyce. Unless you are, like, a hardcore literature reader, you're not gonna know who James Joyce is. And to be fair, I don't know if I knew him before I started reading, you know, before BookTube, and I heard other people mention. I mean, I think he might have been an author that I had heard his name, so I guess it's a little hypocritical of me to respond like that, because it's like, I probably didn't hear about him either. But yeah, sometimes I get so lost in the world of literature that I forget that there's a world outside of literature of people that aren't familiar with this kind of work, aren't familiar with these famous authors. And yeah, James Joyce is, I think, in my personal opinion, a very challenging author to read from what I've read so far. And the fact, you know, it's like, the more creative authors want to get, like, especially the older authors, the harder the books are to read, the more challenging they are to read. It's like, okay, yeah, that's not exactly fair to us that do want to appreciate these works. But it's kind of hard to appreciate them when we struggle with comprehending them. And it's not fair to be like, oh, well then don't bother reading them then. It's like, well, you're losing readers if you respond like that. Of course, it doesn't matter because James Joyce particularly is probably dead now. He's dead. But still, I mean, it's kind of frustrating when authors are trying to get creative with the writing style. It's like, you know, it's like, but why? You know, I mean, you don't want to give people a chance? Like, sorry, you know, you're gonna lose the average reader. You might lose the average reader, you know, and it's like, that still means readership. Even if they're not, you know, literary geniuses like you. But like I said, it doesn't matter because James Joyce and some of the other authors are dead. And most authors today are not that creative. Don't get creative in that sense. I mean, there's people like Franzen, I think, who tries, and William Gaddis. And I have a lot of respect for those authors, you know. I mean, that's cool that they get creative, but I wish they were a little less creative, at least with the writing style. But anyway, so yeah. So that's really, I guess, my update for you guys. I don't know what I'm gonna bring with me when I go to my sister's. Like I said, probably definitely gonna bring Mysteries of Udolpho. That's definitely going for Jane Austen July. I might bring this, you know, The Burning God, because I feel like I need to get to this one. But I cannot decide with the other ones, and I don't want to bring too many books with me, because it's not like I'm going to get a lot of time reading, but I can't narrow it down to just two. It's just too hard. But anyway, so that is how it's going with my reading right now. I hope you guys are enjoying your reading as well, and would love to know what you are currently reading. Feel free to share in the comments below what you're currently reading, and maybe your feelings about it so far. That would be kind of interesting to hear. And I mean, maybe it might interest me. I don't know. But anyway, if you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't already, and you are interested in watching more of my videos. And also, if you are interested in watching more of my videos, click the bell icon below so you can be notified about my latest videos if you want to. And I hope you are enjoying your reading, as I said, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye.